Hey everyone, Tim here from Snap Attack. Let's dig into this week's threat snapshot. So today we're going to be digging into two vulnerabilities affecting open source Apache products. Now, I know this industry gets a lot of flack for chasing CVEs. I mean, after all, they are the shiny new objects, critical vulnerability, patch now. It's information overload, but I think one of the things we try to do here at Snap Attack is really take a look at the vulnerability, look at the characteristics of it. Is there a proof of concept exploit available? Is it something that has a wide installation base? Is it something that's trivial for an attacker to exploit? Does it require authentication? And once it meets a lot of those criteria, that's when it escalates to a threshold where you maybe do want to take some sort of action beyond just patching. What happens if I miss a system, or what happens if the patch fails, which sometimes happens in some of these instances where we think that the vendor patched the system, but an attacker can change the exploit just a little bit and get around that new mitigation that they put in there. So the two that we want to look at today, again, meet these criteria. The first one is going to be in Apache Struts 2. So if you're not familiar with that, it's a Java web development framework, allows you to very quickly and easily build applications on top of Java, gives you a lot of reusable widgets, code patterns, and things. And the reason we wanted to cover this is Apache Struts is used in a lot of applications, and it's the underlying framework. So an application vendor is going to have to update Struts and then push out an update to the user. So that all takes time. And again, if they are using the vulnerable component here and they're using it in a way that can be exploited, that gives attackers a longer time target of opportunity to be able to exploit these. One of the things, especially with this Apache Struts, if we look back, this was the hack that was used against Equifax in 2017. So again, very high impact when these sort of things, it's in a library in another application, it's not patched. So we wanted to cover this here too, because this is a very critical CVSS score 9.8. Technically it's coded as a path traversal bug, but again, with path traversal you can get remote code execution if you can upload to an interesting path. If you want a little bit more of a technical article, I think Trend Micro, excuse me, does a really good deep dive into how the vulnerability works, where the vulnerable pieces of code are, how to get the requests done. So we'll link that into the snapshot here. We also do have collections now for each threat snapshot, which you can search in the platform. You can see the related intelligence, the threats, detections, attack scripts if they're available. And you can see here, again, this is a path traversal attack, which leads to remote code execution. So path traversal, if you've ever seen those and the arbitrary file uploads, I've got this poc.txt, probably going to rename that something like poc.jsp, or maybe that would be a jar file that I would upload, because again, we're in Java land right now. And we get to specify an upload file name, and you've got that //, which is telling it to take the current directory that it's in and go back up a directory or two in this case. That allows an attacker to change the path, and if it's an arbitrary read, they could read a file like etc password or a config file or some other interesting things on there. In this case, it's a file write, so as long as they know the web root directory, they can put a web shell there, and then they'll be able to execute code in the context of the web server. So interesting vulnerability, interesting class. Let's take a look. What does this look like in Snap Attack? So Apache Struts, again, it's a multi-platform development framework. So, we're going to look at this on Windows today, but this would just as easily work on Linux. In fact, we have another threat in here, showcasing it on Linux. So we've got a basic Struts application here. We're running Apache Tomcat as the web server. Not a whole lot on the victim side. We'll hop over to the attacker. And again, this is no authentication required in this instance. We can just take the proof of concept exploit. We can point the server at the right path. We can upload the file, and you can see it's going to upload a web shell there, and then it's going to connect to it. So we can issue arbitrary commands. We're going to do like a basic who am I, do a host name. In this case, it's running under NT Authority Local Service, but if it's configured in a different way, and again, different applications are configured differently, If it's not configured with a reduced privilege account, sometimes you might even be seeing something running as system or administrator, which can be, really bad and lead to a lot of, compromise. You can even see a detection that who am I running as system hit in one of these instances. So good news is this is highly detectable. Lots of opportunities here, some evergreen, some a little bit newer that we're going to talk about. And again, this is a very common, we talk about the parent-child relationships a lot here. When you see Tomcat 9.1 spawning who am I, when you see it spawning host name, very easy to spot these sort of things in a graph view. So what are some ways that we can, detect and look at this? If you have network logs, network activity, this is a bro or Zeek detection. Where we can, again, look for that URL with the upload action, look for the upload file name containing the directory traversal, and just see that it has those values here. So this is, easy to use, easy to detect if you have network, and it would look for that directory traversal. Specifically, again, this is targeted to that Apache Struts path, but again, this could be also a very good evergreen. Are there directory traversal attacks going against any sort of other endpoint? You could easily see how this could become a hunt rule. Unusual Tomcat file write. Again, so what we're doing is we are, doing that local, that path traversal and the local file upload. We're able to, specify the file we want to write, and Tomcat is the web server. So ultimately, that's what's going to be writing that file. So if we're looking for certain file names, certain folders, again, if we're looking for like JSP or jar files, if it's running in a Windows environment in the program files directory, that could be a good place to look and see these sort of things. We also do have, more generic rules. Again, if we're looking at, web shell indicative process trees, what sort of things are spawning, whereas Tomcat or Nginx or, IIS spawning, CMDs, PowerShells, other things of that nature. Or even just basically looking for web shell creation. So tell me anytime that there's a JSP or a WAR or a, jar file that's being, created in, the web apps directory or whatever that is relevant to there. So you can see again here how this could very easily detect that sort of following behavior. Even though this is a zero-day attack, there are good evergreen, detection opportunities here. So moving on, let's pivot over to the next vulnerability we wanted to cover. This is in Apache OfBiz. Probably one of those tools you haven't heard of, but it has a very wide installation base, similar to, say, a lot of the, Atlassian software, so like a Jira, Confluence. It's open source, and it's an enterprise resource planning or an ERP software tool. Because of its wide installation base, it is going to be highly targeted. SonicWall, you can see here, they've been tracking this, and it does have a lot of exploitation attempts. This is something that can be seen, on internet-facing servers, and because of the low sophistication of this exploit, it's definitely, there's an authentication bypass and then remote code execution piece. It allows, very easily for an attacker to get code execution on the system, and then, there might be sensitive information on the server itself, or they could pivot to other machines. So again, this is something that is, very much seen. This is a little bit more recent article talking about this vulnerability. Again, seeing, hosts that are online, seeing that there are lots of exploits coming up. We definitely think there's going to be a lot of activity around this. Again, have another collection here. We can see the two phases here. So the first part is going to be an authentication bypass. This was an original CVE 2023-49070. Very simple, trivial. Here you can see there's a ping command, and then there's the user password required password change that's going to, bypass the flaw. The code execution piece, this was a follow-on. This is 51467. And this is going to be a serialization bug that you can use here. So again, you can use something like YSO serial. You've got the example payload that's going to be generated. You can put in that serialized payload, send this to the server, the XML RPC endpoint, and that's going to deserialize that code. And in this case, we're just going to execute calc in here. So again, we've got some intelligence, threats, detections. Let's take a look at what this actually looks like in Snap Attack. So we've got the, the two bypass, or the bypass here, and then the code execution. We have OfBiz running on a Windows server. Not a lot to see here. We just kind of have it running in a console, and we've got our Linux attacker machine. You can see that ping pong. So we're going to do the authentication bypass first, and then we're going to serialize. Again, you're going to see we're going to create the calc, and we're going to actually go ahead and run that. And if I hop back over here, you'll see in a moment or two, we've got calc that pops up under the hood. So we popped our calc, and we have successfully exploited the vulnerability. Again, some opportunities here for detection. So let's take a look what we have here. You have Java popping, spawning calc, so that parent-child relationship is going to be suspicious, and that's something that we can use in general, is taking a look for suspicious child processes. Again, OfBiz is going to run a little bit differently, so we're going to look for the command line that has OfBiz jar, and if we're looking for this, then we can tell that that's an OfBiz process. Like you saw there, it could be java.exe, it could be Tomcat, depending on how it's running. It might be a different server there, but we can at least scope that here. So if we want to deploy this to OfBiz servers and see, this could be a good opportunity. Another option here, so we've got this Apache OfBiz auth bypass. So this was the first part of it here. This would be a good opportunity for network detection. Again, if you've got Zeek or Bro logs, taking a look to see if you've got like username and the password, the web tools, like this very specific chain here. This would allow you to see that bypass first before, which is again required for the other parts of the RCE chain. So again, wanted to cover these two vulnerabilities. We've got a couple more in a future snapshot that we're going to be covering. This is a weekly series, so like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.